Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. Been another hectic week. Lots happening both sides of the border and down with our cousins in Wales. And we'll cover as many topics as we possibly can and give you our slant on it. But let's start right away. We're getting close to an election, and the private polling, I'm suggesting, must be going really badly for the union, because Phil, they're up to their old games again, and this is the latest one that came out. Scottish independence would be a victory for Putin, the UK Defence Minister says. And I believe next week it's to be the aliens will land. At the day we become independent, aliens will land from Mars. The Chinese will arrive the following Tuesday. We'll have no money, no water. The fish will all swim south to England. The whiskey will stop being produced. There'll be no more products for whiskey. We might as well give up. The nonsense has started early.
Yeah, it's as if the Chinese are massing on the French coast, building barges to invade jolly old England. It's horse piss. So, firstly, Russia is defeating NATO in Ukraine, and we, the West, started this war. Secondly, to win, the strategy as set out in the RAND Corporation paper I spoke about recently on the show called Extending Russia, competing from an advantageous ground, and I would urge people to read that because that's really what's happening here. It was published in April 24, 2019 and still downloadable from the RAND.org. So now the RAND Corp document states that RAND is a non-profit, non-partisan research organisation that provides leaders with the information they need to make evidence-based decisions. What this guy, this UK Defence Minister, is spouting exactly the contents that's in this paper. What it is, though, the RAND Corporation is just another right-wing think tank that designs long-term policies, i.e. beyond the duration of a single term in Parliament, to benefit the corporations that fund them, so that the governments, no matter whether nominally left or right, it doesn't matter, they follow these policies to satisfy the same corporations that control the government through the lobbyists. They're used to control the politicians. They follow this. And it doesn't matter if you're left or right. This is how you get a continuation of policy under our system, and it's corrupt to the core. Again, I'd refer you to the magnificent article in Private Eye titled Revolving Doors on how this works. So back to the question and the objective of the Western strategy for Russia and Ukraine, and that we are implementing this to the letter, is to create a state of permanent war with Russia. This is what this guy's spouting. This is what the UK Defence Minister's spouting, and that we are implementing this. What we're looking for is a state of permanent war with Russia on the Ukrainian front that costs lives and keeps Russian assets and money tied up fighting there, and thereby stopping them from helping out their other allies elsewhere. Pretty much similar like the DNV that we had in North and South Korea. The UK Defence Minister is offensive in both meanings of the word. A bought and sold warmonger, and Russia does not seek to invade Europe, so are not a threat to the UK, and of course, unless we were stupid as to send more British personnel into Ukraine and escalate things by allowing the Americans to send Tomahawks, potentially nuclear capped missiles, in which case they would be legitimate targets. If we send people into Ukraine as Russia seeks to defend its territories there, they would be legitimate targets. It's crazy. And remember the election in 2018, I think. All these areas in Ukraine voted to remain Russia, Donbass, etc., have always been Russian and have aligned with Moscow. So I would turn, if we get an independent Scotland, how this would change, I would turn our 5 NATO listening stations into totally neutral radar stations for peace, providing access to watching the skies for all to help support peace on earth. And the great thing is, we know not only Scotland, the vast majority of the people on the planet would agree with us and an independent Scotland, and not the UK Minister for War.
Correct. It's a load of nonsense, Hal. I mean, here's the thing. What he's actually saying, they're trying frighten the Scottish people, the old Reds under the bed stuff again. We colonise you, Scotland, but you better watch the Russians want to come and colonise you, and that'd be worse. Well, apart from having to learn a different language, and they say, you can avoid Alzheimer's by learning a new language. So I'm up for that, but what difference is it who colonises you? You're colonised.
There's no difference. I mean, the fact is, England are telling us that we cannot go independent because we're too poor. We're a backward country. So why would Russia be interested in us? Why? I mean, it's just a piece of nonsense. I mean, they keep telling us that, and you're right about the Reds under the beds. It's an old argument getting brought forward again. And this happens when populations start questioning their own governments. Mm-hmm. They need you to focus on someone else. I mean, remember going through the 70s and 80s, we were all terrified of nuclear weapons. We were all terrified that we were going to be hit with a nuclear bomb at one stage, because that was put through our brains time and time again. And that was just to deflect us away from what was happening within our own government. But I mean, they've said, George Robertson, you mentioned the aliens, but remember George Robertson in 2014, or it might be in 2013, who said an independent Scotland would be open from attack from outer space.
Yep.
He actually said that on national TV. Yeah. That's how desperate these people are. But I mean, every time we go for independence, and we must be hitting the amber warning lights just now, because this is what they're coming up with. As soon as we hit the red warning, it'll get even worse. But they accuse an independent Scotland of destroying NATO, bankrupting the economy, starting wars, and now it's apparently a win for Putin. It's just total and utter nonsense. Because the real threat to Scotland is Westminster. It is them who are putting weapons of mass destruction on our soil, making us a target for everyone. It's them who are entering into illegal wars. It's them who is helping in a genocide in Israel. It is them who is blowing people out of their own country and putting them on boats to come to our country, and are then complaining about people coming on boats to our country. It's their fault for funding the bombs that are going in there and blowing them out of their own country. But I mean, if Putin, you've got to look at this. They say Russia's a threat. If Russia's a threat, why is the Labour Party and the Tory Party and the Reform Party all being funded by Russian oligarchs?
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, my backside, they're being funded. I remember one thing, it was an auction in the Tory Party conference where an oligarch bid to have a date with Ruth Davidson. Wonder if she ever went on that date, because it was never ever revealed. But, I mean, Westminster runs their own area like a little boys' club. And you just sit there and make up as many lies as they can. But Russia is not a threat to an independent Scotland, because an independent Scotland is not a threat to anyone, because we are a neutral, peace-loving country. At this present time, we're just being pulled into every war by the warmongers in Westminster.
Now, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Scotland, if you actually, I know we don't teach history in Scottish schools anymore, but if you do some history and research, folks, for 800 years, Scotland's only had one enemy. Only one country that ever wanted to invade us. Until we get into that union, and then, but we've only had one enemy our own time. The Romans, the Vikings, and then the English. Not the Russians. The Russians haven't threatened us. The Iranians haven't threatened us. The North Koreans haven't threatened us. It's not just geography. I mean, how did they get to us from Russia to Scotland? But, they lied to us about weapons of mass destruction to make us so they could get up to something. They lied about self-defense in Palestine. They've lied about, it's going to be Sharia law. If you don't, the immigrants are all the problem, and it's Sharia law. It's just all scaremongering so that we're looking somewhere else while they're putting their hands in our pocket and stealing from us.
It's very unnecessary. Excuse me. But, the Russians are like the Scots. They've got long memories. I'm far from alone, being the descendant of one who worked on the Atlantic convoys. My granda went to Murmansk and Vladivostok to try to assist the Russians during the war. Many Scots did, and the Russians remember that. They know their history. And there is a saying about fighting for your class as opposed to for your party or for your country, and that's something that the Russians hold dear too. But I had to do a bit of research about who it was that you were quoting there, Roddy, because the chap that made the comment about the Russian threat is a man called Luke Pollard.
Oh.
I've never heard of him before, but his title is
Zionist.
He's the Minister for Defence Readiness. And what he was annoyed about was that Scotland is opposed to nuclear weapons. And he said that the thing that Putin fears most is the nuclear deterrent based on the Clyde. But actually, that's one of the reasons for Scotland becoming independent, is the fact that the nuclear deterrent is based on the Clyde. If Luke Pollard is so concerned about the nuclear deterrent, why doesn't he ram it up his Thames or park it down, off the south coast of England if it's so safe? So I think the difficulty here is, as usual, you've got deflection and distraction, because this is about Britain warmongering, Britain wanting to talk in terms of being one of the big boys on the world stage and wanting Scots to feel part of something that's big and powerful, when in fact Britain's just a bully and they're dishonest at the same time. I mean, what he went on to say was he's very mindful that the future of Scotland is very much down to the people of Scotland. Well, as somebody asked him if he's given consent to a referendum, because I think we know the answer to that. But he says, if I was sat in the Kremlin and there was a way to erode defence capabilities, I would regard Scottish independence as a win. I mean, what a lot of rubbish. We're investing in defence. These companies that are investing in Scottish jobs, there's jobs in Scottish shipyards, building frigates, a whole load of stuff that he's going on about. But what it boils down to, he is Britain's man in Westminster, obviously, but he's dictating to the Scots what their future should and shouldn't be on the one hand, and on the other saying it's a question for the Scots themselves, when his party is simply not prepared to enable the Scots to take that decision for themselves. So this is yet another lesson from Project Fear and from what is in essence no better than Big Brother.
Yeah. In fact, what we should also remember, folks, during the independence referendum in 2014, it was big bad Russia and big bad Putin who told us that David Cameron had phoned round and was asking them to scupper Scottish independence. Putin refused. Obama didn't. Obama stuck the boot in. The old Queen, she stuck the boot in. The Russians didn't. So who's our enemy? But the reasons, we come up with reasons every week of why we need to get out of the union and why it's not working for us. And one of them is this. A couple of things first. This is the one, Phil. Labour cuts the funding for Scottish fishing sector by 83%. Bad enough, but what it's done is given us a convert to Scottish independence. Now, I was delighted to see there's a new, and I'm thinking about approaching him and seeing if he perhaps would like to stand for Holyrood, for Liberate Scotland, because there's nothing like a sinner who has, seen the error of his ways, Phil.
So yesterday came the disgraceful confirmation that Scottish fishermen, despite landing over 60% of Britain's fish, will receive less than 8% of the new Coastal and Fisheries Fund. That's £28 million out of a possible £360 million. This fund, which was created to buy off fishermen as a result of the disgraceful decision to reopen British waters to European fishing vessels for years and years to come, is simply unfair. And we know why Labour are doing it. They don't represent rural Scotland. They don't represent our fishing communities. They don't represent our farmers. They've got no MPs in Scotland's mainland north of Perth. So they don't care. They don't understand. And it's time for them to think again. Scottish fishermen contribute so much to our society, to our economy, but also, of course, importantly, to our food security. They deserve their fair share of this fund, and that's what we're going to fight for.
I was absolutely delighted to see that, I wonder if Andrew Bowie is now, a Tory has now become a yes man. He actually made a fantastic case there for Scottish independence.
Yes, he did, and it's finally dawning, and even the BBC can't hide this one. So when I looked at the Angus Cochrane article, so reporting that the UK government has been told that its decision to give less than 8% of the 360 million fishing fund to Scotland is ocean-going madness. And bear in mind, Scotland lands over 60% of all fish. Why? Because over 2/3 of the sea area of the UK actually belong to Scotland. And that's why we've got most of the oil and most of the gas. We should remember that classic one. 8.3% of the population, 96.5% of the oil, 65% of the gas, 66 of the fish by landings. It's just, it goes on, 90% of the fresh water, etc., etc., etc. But this is just, it's so embarrassing for the British government. It should be. They don't give a damn. I mean, the Scottish Government and industry bodies have also criticised this and said the Labour ministers really need to rethink this investment, because 28 million from 360 million fishing and coastal growth fund, a share of about 8%, in spite of our vessels, as you say, landing always more than half, often up to over 60% of the fish by landings. And the Labour Environment Minister, Angela Eagle, said that the UK government was working with communities to maximise the value of the fund. My backside, it's going to mates rates and people in England. Although Scottish vessels, I mean, we're about 40% of the UK fleet, we still more than land. It's still 60% or more of the UK's fishing capacity. You know, and more than 60% of the seafood exports. So the Labour minister said that this. They're supposed to modernise and revitalise UK's fishing fleet. If most of it comes in from Scotland, why are we not getting the money? Dead simple. And the other thing, this comes from the government website. The UK fishing opportunities are worth over 970 million secured for 2024. And that's from the UK government website of the Department of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And of course, the Right Honourable Sir Mark Spencer. Ooh, Betty. So total fishing opportunities worth around 1 billion was secured for the UK fishing industry in 2024. In an independent Scotland, all of this and more would be ours, because there's another thing we've got to remember. And fair play to Bowie, he nailed it there. Fishing is important to Scotland, much more than England. And so in negotiations with the EU and other business partners, fishing rights are sold off way down the pecking order in order for better benefits for the things that benefit England. So it's a double whammy. We've got to get out independence, nothing less. It's the only thing that can fix this.
Correct. The same fishermen who voted for the Tories for years and then decided they'd vote for Brexit because they weren't getting a good deal with the common fishery policy. And it's back, it's worse than ever, Alan. But there's really the result of getting 8% of that fund, when as Phil has alluded to, when the majority of the fishing and the fish has landed in Scotland, it just goes to confirm what a lot of Scots don't want to admit, and no one else in England will. We're a colony. We're treated like a colony. We're raped and pillaged and treated like shit.
Yeah, and it also smashes Gers wide open, because all this money that's generated in Scotland, with the vast majority of it being allocated to England, and we are given a very small allocation of that pot, showing how they manipulate the figures that create Gers. I mean, it's quite obvious. We catch the fish. They bank the cash. And it's been going on for years and years and years. I mean, 60% of that money going south of the border. To do what? To pay for bombs, to fix English infrastructure, while we are struggling to eat and heat our homes. It is ridiculous. I mean, we've got cuts coming through the entire sector in Scotland, and we're sending all that money down south. And yet they keep telling us that we're too poor. Yeah, we're too poor because you're thieving from us. In fact, it's not thieving because this is on water, so it's piracy with the jolly Union Jack rogering every single fisherman. It's time people woke up. And fishermen, you're right, fishermen used to be Tory mad, and then they were Brexit mad. What you are is actually just mad.
Yep.
Look at what's happening to you. Don't listen to what they're saying to you. Look at what's happening to you and react to that. Because the only way to save your industry is by getting behind Liberate Scotland and freeing Scotland from this regime. We need to have control, total control of all our finance and all our sectors. Otherwise, you're going to be rogered every single way. And if you want to save your industries, and if you want to have a business again, independence is the only way you could go forward. That money that's been raised and sent down to England could be building infrastructures within every single community right throughout Scotland, improving the lives of every single Scot. Instead, we are begging for crumbs from our own table. That's how our government are reacting to this. They're doing absolutely nothing. They should be putting their foot down and saying, no more. It's not happening. Get the Independence Convention up and running now. Get under our umbrella, and let's fight 2026 in the interests of Scottish industry, Scottish economy, and the Scottish people. Let's get independence in 26.
Well said. Here's the thing. It's unusual, Eva, to have a Tory, any of the unionists attacking another unionist from Scotland. But Andrew Bowie making a great case there for independence, and he couldn't blame the SNP for once. It was quite extraordinary to see them actually blaming something in the union. Truth doesn't come from them often.
No, maybe it's an epiphany. Maybe he's on the road to Damascus. But what this made me think about was, again, what you could do were Scotland independent and were we run by politicians who had Scotland's best interests at heart, because the sum of money that's been made available there is huge. However, it's nowhere near as much as it should be, given the facts that have already been covered, particularly by Phil there. But one of the things that's a bugbear for me, and I'm sure it is for everybody else here, is the fact that Scotland does not have a direct ferry route to Europe. And if Scotland had a direct ferry route to Europe, we could be trading directly. Our fish, for example, our seafood could be transported from Scotland to Europe or Scotland to Scandinavia. It would cost of the order of a maximum of £8 million, and this is according to research done by the former SNP MP Douglas Chapman. It would cost a maximum of £8 million to kickstart and provide the initial funding to reopen a ferry route, or to open a ferry route from Rosyth to Dunkirk. And that is exactly what Scotland's needing. Now, the Labour MPs in Fife have been given £40 million of our money, but come back from Westminster, for projects in Fife. They should be using that money for the ferry route, and that would assist the fishermen. It would assist, for example, the export of whisky, because there's a whole load of Scottish resources and Scottish goods that could go direct to Europe, thereby dealing with climate change and issues in relation to that particular matter too, cutting down on road miles and what have you. But if we could reintroduce that ferry route, and the quicker that it's done, the better. Think about the impact on Scotland's tourist industry, for example. People would be coming from the European continent directly to Scotland, spending their money in Scottish ports as their first ports of call, not having to travel through England to get here. They would come here directly. And that is an extension of the argument about the fish. You know, remember the old joke on the radio with a guy with a lorry load of fish that he was trying to deliver somewhere, and was he coming up the front or coming up the back? Well, if you actually had joined up thinking, you could be delivering Scottish fish to Europe on the same day that it was caught and landed ashore, rather than having to think about other situations and circumstances and travelling south, etc., to ports in the north or the south of England. So what we need are people that have got imagination and that are constructive, rather than just whining and moaning. But I noticed that one of the last things that Bowie said in his clip there was, it's time to think again. Well, I hope he is thinking again. And I hope that he and many others like him, and in the Tory party, are looking at the results from elsewhere in the UK and considering that if they want to have a political future, then perhaps their future is on the right wing in a Tory party in an independent Scotland. Because there are Tories in Scotland, there will always be Tories in Scotland, but if they want to have a modicum of representation, then the Tories who support independence should have the guts to stand up and say so. We know they exist.
Indeed. And talking on Tories, Stephen Kerr, MSP, who more than a week ago he was complaining that no one would debate unionism versus nationalism with him. He was offered a platform here. You will be surprised, shocked, stunned even, folks, to hear he didn't take up the offer. He ran away. because he's feared, because the union does not stand up to debate. The paucity of the union is quickly exposed, and this is a classic case of it. And here's another thing. There's a new fund come out, Phil, and it's even worse than the fishing. And that's the regional pot. We see that a Kent caravan park and Leeds football stadium are getting a bigger share of this 10 billion pot, the regional investment. But we're not a colony. Oh, no, we're not a colony. But a football stadium or a caravan park can get more than a whole nation.
Yeah, we're laughing, but we shouldn't be. We know this, and the good thing is the Scottish people know that we're getting shafted. That's why independence is over 50% and pushing 60%. And what we need is the vehicle to do it. The focus is quickly turning now, because this is just another example. We'll go on in a wee minute, but the people in Scotland are waking up to the fact that SNP are not, unless you're into unification, SNP are not the party. They're interested in the party and jobs for themselves and lining their own pockets. They're not unifying the cause, and they're doing the opposite of what's required to give us independence. And yet the people are screaming out for it, some more than others, especially those in poverty. This one, again, you go into look for yourself, folks. Go into the websites of the UK government. So this is the Regional Investment Summit, okay? It's supposed to deliver almost 1,000 jobs for UK communities. Where did we hear that one before? So they're to be rated as a major boost to communities across the UK after over 10 billion in investments were announced at the first Regional Investment Summit. Now, 10 billion investment commitments announced, and it's a major boost for towns, high streets and communities across the UK. That's the idea behind it, and delivering on the government's so-called plans for change. Almost 1,000 high-quality jobs, allegedly, are to be created in the UK's regions and nations, with major investment in life sciences and AI innovation. Now, as you say, it's like new investments include 200 million for Leeds, for Elland Road, Leeds United, the Crown Estate acquisition in Oxfordshire to increase laboratory and manufacturing space that could produce this. It's all promises and ifs, buts and maybes. So Scotland is around 8% of the 8.4% of the UK population, but we get 1/10 of what would be an equitable distribution based on population. So yet again, Scotland continue to get shafted, continue to be an economy in spite of having some of the worst area of deprivation in Britain. The poverty is horrendous. 1 in 4 in poverty, and we're getting 1/10 of what we would do if we were getting our fair share on a population basis. It's just more evidence that we need to get the hell out of this union.
Sure, absolutely it is. Here's another one, Alan. And this is from the National. There's actually 2 or 3 things I want to take on in this one as we go on. But we're getting pocket change. That's a fact. On the fishing, we're getting on the development grants, the pot from that. We just keep getting taken to the cleaners.
Yeah, I mean, it's evidence that there is no union. Therefore, there's no unionists. There are Scottish nationalists and there is British nationalists. And remember, British equals English. We've got so many house jocks in this country. They have to open up their eyes. I mean, you've got Leeds getting twice as much as what Scotland's getting. That's one region of area of England getting more than an entire country of Scotland. And I'm sure we contribute to the treasury a lot more than what comes from Leeds. I mean, that's not an investment. That's slapping the face from a butcher's apron. And you can just imagine them all sitting around the boardroom in Westminster, can't you? Saying, we've got £10 billion here, folks. How do we divvy it up? And somebody's saying, oh, we'll better give Scotland something for a pothole fund or something, just to keep them happy and quiet. That'll keep our Tories and Labour happy up there. But in England, they fund them for football stadiums, railways, vanity projects, and all we get is a tiny little fund. It's yet again another slap in the face for Scotland. People have got to waken up for this. We contribute so much to England, but even when they're doing the books, out of the money that we've sent down to them, they only associate a portion of that money to us, so that it makes the Gers look good and make Scotland look bad, make us look really poor. But that's not how it works. I mean, you've got companies in Scotland like take Tesco's or Asda's, who have their headquarters down in England. All the tax revenues that are raised in these companies in Scotland are submitted from their English headquarters. So that then goes on to the English books, not the Scottish books. And that's how they manipulate the numbers. It's a simple mathematical jiggery-pokery, but it's been done for many, many years. Once we get independent, the people of this country are going to be shocked at how rich this country actually is.
Mm-hmm.
We will be able to make so many improvements. We will be able to lift every single one of our people out of poverty. And I don't mean just above the baseline of poverty. I mean out of poverty. And we will have a proper safety net to stop anyone from falling back into that poverty. We are richer than Norway. And look at Norway.
Mm-hmm.
They have just received, was it £2 billion from their wealth fund? I mean, they manage their economy properly. They're not spending it on weapons of mass destruction. They're not spending it on illegal wars. They're spending it on priorities to make sure their people live a life they deserve. And that's what an independent Scotland should be doing. And the only way we could do that is by getting rid of these shysters down in Westminster, and any of their colleagues that are still in Scotland could move down with them.
Correct. In Norway, in fact, they're saying if they didn't put another penny into the sovereign wealth fund, they've got enough to fund the next 8 generations, to give them some of the highest standard of living in the world. I mean, people were complaining that were at the football match in Norway, it's £8 for a pint, but the disposable income is far greater than anything that we can think of. But these things, Eva, all of them, the fishing, the development fund, we are treated like dirt every time. We're a colony, nothing else.
We will remain a colony unless and until there is unity in the independence movement. And the unionists and whoever sits in number 10 at any given time is able to laugh at the Scots and to treat us badly with impunity, because we're not a united independence movement. There is not a united, agreed policy to take us towards attaining our independence. And that's the key to these difficulties, and it's the key to solving the problem. Because the Westminster and number 10 are afraid when the Scots are united. They were afraid in 2014 because what they saw was what they had not anticipated. David Cameron grossly underestimated the power of the Yes movement, and they're not going to make that mistake again. What they will continue to do is to tell the Scots that Westminster's looking after us very well indeed, that we're a drain on the British economy, and that we are very lucky to get the scraps that come from Westminster's table. But the reality is very, very different, as Alan and Phil have said, and as we say every week. But it doesn't actually matter how rich Scotland is, or what the value of Scottish resources is, or could be, or what we could do had we control of our own resources, if we don't actually have a proper campaign to regain our independence. We can whine and moan about it forevermore. But if all we're going to do is say, one day, somehow far away, we can do this thing and Scotland will be independent and it'll be a land of milk and honey, we're just making a fool of ourselves, and we're enabling Westminster to continue to poke fun at us, to take a loan of us, to take our resources and use them for Westminster's purposes. And this is precisely why we don't want to see what we saw during the week. I know you're coming to it just now, Roddy, but we don't want to see any more of this girning and whining and moaning, begging bowl mentality, pleading to Westminster for a referendum. We should be saying collectively as a movement to everybody in Scotland who currently supports independence, because we know that that's well over 50% and probably over 60%, let us join together and have the campaign to deliver what we need to deliver to the people of Scotland, and it's self-determination. We will forevermore remain a colony unless and until we've got that unity of purpose and unity of policy. Were we not a colony, long ago Westminster would have narrated the method by which we could regain our independence, but instead they laugh and say it was once in a generation, and they refer to us as whinging lazy Scots that, as I said, are being subsidised. People of Scotland need to waken up, but the politicians who claim to represent the independence movement of Scotland need to be honest and talk honestly and with strength about a policy that will take us to where we need to go.
Absolutely, 100% even, as always. What the Scots have shown, Phil, they're opposed to weapons of mass destruction. And, Scottish surveys and any opinion polls that are run and on the doorsteps, the Scots have been opposed to nuclear weapons for decades, forever. We talked last week about the nuclear spill in Faslane. The previous week or a couple of weeks before that, the nuclear spill in Doon in the Holy Loch, and then this week we saw again another one in Dounreay, where they found it was the most radioactive find for 3 years coming out of Dounreay. But worse than that, Miliband said, that clown, the net zero clown, who has said that should Labour and the Union, well, it means Labour, a Labour coalition with the Reform, Labour, Tories, Liberals, form an administration, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to immediately get GB Energy to scope out Scotland to get nuclear power, locations so they can build new reactors. Now, Scotland already exports so much electricity. In fact, we cover about 25% of all of England's needs. We don't need nuclear power and all the mess that comes with it. But they're using it because England needs it. But we're not a colony, Phil. We're not a colony.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, he was quoted, this bozo. I mean, net zero is a nonsense, as we know. But he's quoted as saying, if Scotland elects a Labour government on the 6th of May, on day one, May 7th, Anna Sarwar and I will invite the world's nuclear industry to Scotland to begin talks about investing in Scottish locations, he said, incorrectly stating the expected date of next year's election on May 7th. But that's beside the point. The fact is this, that we generate way more than we need in energy, that we do not need nuclear energy. And what we're talking about, Dounreay spewing out record levels of nuclear waste, and we spoke about this earlier on the importance of Scottish fishing. And it's in spite of Scotland providing over 60% of fish by land, as we only receive 8% of the UK's 360 million fish fund. But one of the reasons Scottish seafood is celebrated around the world is the cleanliness and purity of our waters. The sea around Scotland is clean, and as important to the fishing industry as the Scottish water on land is to our whisky industry, both of which of course, are being stolen and the revenue all going south, but not happy with just stealing all the money. The Brits are destroying that valuable asset by allowing the dumping of nuclear waste from a nuclear plant at Dounreay that Scotland does not need for its own power. We're way more than self-sufficient in oil, gas and renewable energy, not least of which is wind and tidal. It's incredible. So rather this nuclear power is placed in Scotland for power for England. But like the nuclear weapons just outside Glasgow, the Brits place and will
move your speaker up a wee bit, Phil.
Facilities is far away from the larger English population for safety reasons. So we should be rioting in the streets, if truth be told. And maybe that's what it'll take. Although we at Liberate Scotland advocate peaceful means to free the people of Scotland by the ballot box, this is why anyone opposing unification of the independence movement and sticking with Section 30 referendums plan is a traitor to the Scottish people, because this appalling abuse of the Scottish people and our resources will continue, is escalating, and is every year it's getting worse because they know the game's a bogey. It's about time we stood up and got our independence and stopped all this, because nothing else is going to change it.
This is the thing. Hinkley Power Station, Alan, is about 4 years over 5 years at least overdue and built. It's cost hundreds of millions of pounds more than it should have. What the Scottish Government should turn around now and say, you can start these nuclear power stations, but I tell you what, as soon as we come back into power, if we ever are power and we become independent, we will cancel the contracts and we will not honour anything that's made by the British government. So beware anyone that's thinking about building a power station. That's what's going to happen. We should absolutely go at them. You're muted, I think, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, the Scottish Government won't do that because they abide by the rules and what their masters say. But let's give a fair warning to those companies now that Liberate Scotland will not be fulfilling your contracts. And just like the free ports, we will be ripping those contracts up because they were not agreed by the people of Scotland. And we will not be subject to a coloniser's rules and regulations or contracts. An independent Scotland will be a fresh start for our people. And anything else will be up to renegotiation. But don't bring your nuclear plants to us because we are not interested. We have so much power in this country that we can, as Hazel Lyon put on your blog today, Roddy, a great blog, we can reduce our fuel bills to practically zero because we generate so much. And bringing nuclear power stations here would be like Ibrox putting fertiliser on their pitch when there's so much shite plays on at the weekend.
Aye, steady, Tiger.
So we are in abundance
Sadly
of power.
True.
We are in abundance of power. So we don't need power stations. But it's not for us, though, is it? That's not what they're planning to do. They're not giving us nuclear power stations to generate power for us.
No.
England just don't want the danger of them being in England. So put it up in Scotland and pump it down.
Yeah.
So we take all the risks and they take all the cash again and all the power.
Correct.
Sorry. Ain't going to work. We're not accepting that.
Now, actually, if this was happening in real life, it would be they'd be getting arrested for larceny. But this is the thing, just as we've been talking about earlier, Eva, you know, we're getting 0.83. We produce 8%. We produce 60% of the fish, but we're only getting 8%. We get 0.83 of the 10 billion fund. They're wanting us to take these nuclear power stations and we'll get zero, not a penny out of it. Not a centime will come our way. It is absolute colonisation.
Clearly it is. The whole world knows that. You know, when the team from Liberation Scotland were Alf Baird, Professor Black, Ailsa Gray, SSRG, etc., spoke at the UN recently, that's why they were lauded and applauded, because they were just saying what the rest of the world knows. The British Empire colonised countries. Scotland is pretty well the last outpost of the British Empire. And it's high time that the people of Scotland understood that and really got to grips with something that, as Alf Baird has written about, is embarrassing and it's shameful to accept and to acknowledge and to understand and appreciate and admit that you've been colonised. But we have been, and we are. And we will remain so until we have a joined up policy, as I said earlier. You know, they didn't colonise us to subsidise us. They colonised us to take our wealth. Westminster needs Scotland's wealth to try to survive, even although, you know, they're continuing to run a massive deficit, which is continuing to increase. But where would England be if it didn't regularly plunder Scotland and, to a lesser degree, perhaps Wales? England is not self-sufficient, but they seem to think they are. Well, I think the Independence for England party needs to get a move on. What I would like to see is a massive vote for reform all over England, and reform go for English independence and let the rest of us satellite Celtic nations get on with it by ourselves. That might very well be what the people of England deserve, because in some instances it seems to be what they want, although it's not been replicated elsewhere in these islands, thank goodness. But yep, colony we are, and colony we will stay if the likes of John Swinney continue to be in power in the SNP continues to be the main party in Holyrood and sends, 9 people down to Westminster from whom you hardly ever hear a cheep. And when you do, they're talking about stuff that is largely irrelevant and wasteful. I mean, I saw the SNP's latest escapade during the week was to proceed with a motion regarding stripping further titles away from Prince Andrew. I don't disagree with the sentiment, but for every minute of your time that you're spending shouting about the royalty and the monarchy, it's a minute of your time that you're not building the case for independence and you're not building the unity that the movement desperately needs. That's what should be happening.
Could I just say to the person who sent in the comment last week that they were upset, they couldn't enjoy the programme because they could hear a clicking of a pen and we were to desist from doing that. I just went, can you hear that clicking? There you go. Clicking of pen. Yeah, it is. Sometimes just these things happen. The Tories, the Labour in particular, but they're all doing it, the Liberals and the Tories and Reform, they're all saying it. Oh, the SNP's opposition to nuclear is costing Scotland thousands of nuclear jobs and lots of wealth. That's what they said. That's what they're saying, Phil. But here's the thing. Do you remember this when they told us GB Energy would create 1,000 jobs in Aberdeen? But now Michael Shanks denies they ever said that. We've found there's 3 jobs being created for the 1,000 we're going to get. Why should we believe these nuclear power stations, even if we did want them, were going to give us any jobs? They lie, and they keep lying.
Yep. This is the Energy Minister, Michael Shanks, who said that the UK government did not promise GB Energy would bring 1,000 to its Aberdeen jobs to its Aberdeen headquarters, despite Keir Starmer pledging to do so. I mean, I remember that. I looked it up because I remembered that the Sky report in February of earlier this year, where Keir Starmer's 1,000 job pledge could take up to 20 years, the GB Energy boss started to admit. So the backtracking started almost instantly. So Labour hopes GB Energy at that time will help workers move from oil and gas and has pledged 1,000 jobs for Aberdeen, where the initiative will be based. Well, it's 3. And the boss of GB Energy at that time told Sky News in February it could take 20 years to deliver this Labour government pledge of 1,000 jobs. So Keir Starmer promised voters his flagship green initiative, which will be headquartered in the northeast of Scotland, would also cut consumer energy bills by as much as £300. So no surprise, lies, and no sign of the 1,000 jobs to Aberdeen. First I backed down on the when, maybe it's 20 years, and now, well, just forget it. And as for your energy bills, is there any viewers or any of you guys whose energy bills went down by £300 or more? No, it's the opposite. More lies, more cons, more rip-offs, and it ain't going to finish until we get the hell out of this unequal United Kingdom.
Absolutely. But this is it. They keep lying to us, don't they? And too many of the Scottish public just give them one more chance, just one more chance. What do we have to do to get them to realise that they lie constantly? They can't tell, they don't lie straight in bed at night. And this story about nuclear power station creating jobs and wealth for Scotland is just another lie.
Yeah. I mean, Shanks is like a Labour's answer to a PowerPoint presentation, isn't he? He gets rolled out. He's got a reputation of being a wee bit of a rebel kind times, but it's licensed rebellion where he's allowed to do it. He drives north, announces 1,000 jobs, then straight back again. Now, I'm sitting here with a packet of fags that says, smoking kills. Quit now. Maybe we should put a headline on every single Labour statement saying, Labour lies, kick out now. Because everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie. I mean, you've got GB Energy, that they're wanting more wind, more water, more grid, and all the profits from there are piped quicker down to England than a bloody gay Gordon is. It's just that they rip us off time and time again. And they call it the British energy revolution. There's only one revolution that this country is needing, and that's a political revolution in 2026 to remove every single unionist from that Scottish Parliament so as we could then regain our independence. And mean, the jobs that they're bringing to this country just now, they're vastly PR jobs or clean-up jobs, because they've got to clean up the mess that they have created, and then they've got to put out the line of hiding what they're actually doing and try to put a positive spin on it. And that's all Labour have been doing since Tony Blair. He introduced it, brought in the spin, where he could kill your granny and tell you how good it was for it. So it's people have got, and I say this every single week, stop listening to politicians because lies come out their mouth. Watch their actions, because that doesn't lie. What they do is real to life. What they say isn't.
Yeah, what we should use, you're right, let's remove every unionist, but let's also remove the devolutionists. Yeah. It's the same thing. We should have only independence people in there. That's what we've got to do. But denying that they promised us 1,000 jobs, telling us we'll get thousands of jobs, we just allow England to put nuclear power stations up here. They really do treat us with contempt, Eva.
It's actually worse than that. Why is the word Grangemouth not still on everybody's lips? Remember last year we were told if you want to save Grangemouth, you save Labour. Vote Labour, rather. They did absolutely nothing to keep that refinery open. And that was at a point in time when the English refineries were boasting publicly about how they were expanding so that they could refine the oil that was coming south from Scotland after Grangemouth's anticipated closure. I mean, why any Scottish voter believes a damn thing that comes from any Labour politician absolutely defies belief. So the Grangemouth jobs that have been lost are a minimum of 400 at the plant on its own, but it has a ripple effect so that the total amount of jobs lost is far, far higher. I mean, stick a zero on the end of that at least. Look at the skills that have been lost. Look at the brain drain with people that worked there and have now gone to work abroad. You know, the other thing that was in the news, I think it was today or yesterday, was that there's a shortage of welders in Scotland, and so 300 welders have been employed that have come from the Philippines. This is not news. This is not a surprise. It's the price of being colonised, that you don't have the money to teach and to train. You don't have the brains to teach and to train the people that need to be doing the jobs that we need to be done in an independent country. You know, what we need, we should be building ferries, we should be building ships. You know, look at our coast, look at our coastal waters. We should be building ferries so that we can trade, as I said earlier, with Europe or with Scandinavia. We should be improving accessibility to our own islands for the sake of the people that live there, for the sake of the Scots that want to visit there, and for the sake of the tourists and the trade that want to participate in that fashion. We would be booming as an independent country with a government that was constructive and that was populated by people who were intelligent and who took advice from people who know what they're talking about. Alan mentioned earlier your guest blog today from Hazel, and attached to that is a clip of Phil speaking about energy prices here a few months ago. And there's a comment from Alf Baird, who agrees with every word that Hazel and Phil have had to say. That is not a coincidence. These are people that know what they're talking about. And Scotland needs to regain its freedom using a campaign that's led and facilitated by folk who understand that we need three strands. The international recognition that Liberation Scotland and others have got underway. The democratic event, which is the electoral event, which is what Holyrood 26 could be and should be. And then we need to have politicians with backbone that support the people when the people say, the people speak and say, we want to be an independent country. These three strands, international recognition, democratic event, popular support, and we take our independence and we run with it and we build the country that Scotland is supposed to be. We're not going to be subsidised by anybody because we're not currently subsidised, but we're not going to be plundered either. We're going to keep our own resources for our own good. Build houses, build schools, build colleges, employ teachers, employ professors, get trade up and running the way that it should be, look after our people, but we would have a jobs boom people would be clamouring to come and live and work in Scotland rather than our own people leaving to find jobs abroad and find their fortune abroad because it's not here at home where it should be.
Yeah. And of course, the £200 million that the Labour Party promised in transition for Grangemouth, not a penny has been spent, not a cent. There's that. And we talked about earlier, folks, 60% of the fish gets landed. We could have 100% of that money in Scotland instead of getting a wee crumb back from our friends in England. Now, I'm going to play a video here, Phil, for you. Now, it goes back to, I know he's a pal of yours, Stephen Gethens, and he had an exchange with little Governor General Alexander, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, we'll give you this." You know, the unionists are saying, "Oh yeah, of course, yeah, you get a majority. We'll give you a referendum." And they jumped on at the SNP. Shame on them for being so stupid. Here's
Tell
that
us
video.
who said this. If there's a majority, an SNP majority, it's got to be looked at in Westminster. Who said that?
Mr. Speaker, I sense it might be myself, and we would take seriously any SNP majority. But if they were to be returned to office, I hope they would do better than they've done over the last 18 years. But I can assure you, on this side of the House, we're not anticipating defeat, we're working for victory.
This might get just a little bit awkward. It wasn't the Secretary of State, although I do welcome his contribution to this. It was actually his boss, the leader of the Labour Party, the current Prime Minister, who's about to turn up. Very awkward indeed. There he is. Now, is he going to stick to that commitment, or are we going to see Labour break yet another promise?
Mr. Speaker, not least because my boss has just turned up. I always agree with my boss. But the reality is this: we are clear and unequivocal that what we don't want is the breakup of the United Kingdom. As Scots, we made our choice in 2014, and that was a better future within the United Kingdom.
Just laugh at us. What was it Daniel Defoe said? There'll have enough of us there just to laugh at us. We shouldn't feed them.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's all of this together. No. For me, I took no pleasure in that, and I liked Stephen when I knew him from before. He was into independence, but now he's just playing the game that they would have us play. As Daniel Defoe said, send a modicum, a number of Scots down for show and to be laughed at because they'll be ineffectual. They won't have any power, just for show. And this is what's happening here. Stephen sat in that chamber, getting and listen, he's a capable, intelligent fellow with a family, not a bad person. But what he's doing is unforgivable. And I did message him and say, you know, he came out and used this statement as if John Swinney's strategy was going to work. And I had to message him and say, it looks like our strategy is going to work and we're going to get another Section 30. Looks like doesn't cut it, Stephen. It just doesn't cut it. And for 11 years, we've been sat in our backsides. And I went down with Stephen in 2015, intending and hoping and expecting that this would be the end and I would be the last MP for what it was worth, but to be part of this movement that frees the Scottish people and allows us to achieve all of those aspirations that so many of us have had and free us from the chains that bind us. And instead, what did we get from 2015? Over 10 years later, all of those dreams that were crushed, all those opportunities that were missed because we failed, and you're still talking the same rubbish, Stephen. You're still sitting down there on your nice wee earner while people of Scotland suffer. And it's not just the poverty and the drug use and the deaths and the struggle that everyone faces on a day-to-day basis. It's the missed opportunity and crushed dreams. And you to be guffawing and laughing with those that keep us on our knees makes me sick. It really pisses me off to the point that I've unfriended people for doing less, and it's just, there is no excuse. And I said, you will not be forgiven for this, Stephen. Do not pretend. Do not spin this lie. Do not involve yourself in what the British government are doing to us and to our people. But it's okay because you're doing okay. I'm doing fine. I've got my nice wee number and things are going all right. Not good enough, Stephen. You and the SNP need taken down now.
I've been an abstentionist and I'll continue to be an abstentionist. We shouldn't go near that cesspit, any Scot. But it's bad enough, Alan, that we've shown it throughout this programme here, this podcast rather, that the unionists lie to us, deceive us, throw us, false little narratives. But when the SNP are doing it, the Section 30, one more mandate, and they'll give in. See, and he said it in the Commons, they'll agree to it now. It's disgraceful, disgusting, and unforgivable that our own are even lying to the people of Scotland. Or alleged own, I should say. Alleged.
I mean, what we're seeing there was the old boys club of Westminster, wasn't it? I'll ask you a little question, a little bit of fun. This is about independence. This isn't about fun. And I'll tell you, this is why I'm standing against Gethins. I mean, he said that it was a little bit awkward because the Prime Minister's coming in. No, what was a bit awkward and what was very cringing was a member of the Scottish National Party standing up and still seeking permission from an English Prime Minister over the future of Scotland, because that's what he was doing there. And it is ridiculous. And while he was doing that as well, the British government are talking about sending one of their alleged sexual offenders up to Scotland. They're talking about exiling the Prince Andrew up to Scotland. When I first read it, my first thoughts was, but Barlinnie's overcrowded. Have they not got a prison for him down in England? But we'll find out that he's actually going to be living in a small castle, which he's quite happy with, because seemingly the bedrooms are under 18. So he'd be quite happy. But this is the nonsense that we're getting. We continuously send down all our money down to England. And what do we get back? Nuclear waste, nuclear weapons, paedophiles. Everything that England doesn't want comes back up to Scotland. It's the circle of the British Empire. All the goods go that way, all the bad goes that way.
Correct.
And it's time for that to stop. And there's only one way to do that, and that's independence.
And Eva, it's embarrassing to watch them begging again. And we know they stop begging. The claim of right, the Scottish people are sovereign. We decide. No English Prime Minister. We've given them a plan. We've been doing it on here for years, but there's a plan in place now. No more begging. It's now telling.
That was a disgusting double act that Laurel and Hardy or Cannon and Ball would have been proud of, because it looked like it was choreographed in advance. I'll come in here and then you come in there and I'll do this and everybody will laugh. As people of Scotland are starving and freezing unnecessarily. And these clowns, the word that I don't normally use, but Phil often does, and he's right, he would be right this time. These clowns think it's funny down there making jokes, as the people of Scotland don't have what we should have had. We don't have an oil fund, a wind fund, a wave fund. Instead, we've got food banks and baby banks and school clothing banks. Instead of the energy prices being the way that they should be, rock bottom in Scotland, they're about the highest in Europe. In some cases, they're higher than most of the rest of the world, as Phil says in his video earlier. This is absolutely and completely unacceptable. And it is bad enough that Scotland had for decades the representation from the Labour Party that forgot where they came from when they went down to Westminster. But it is pitiful in the extreme that Scotland is now to an extent represented by nationalists who've gone to Westminster and forgotten why they were there. Have they forgotten Winnie Ewing? Have they forgotten that they were there to make Scotland a better place? They were there to say things like she did, like stop the world, Scotland wants to go on. Instead, if that shiver ran into Westminster these days, it would run around the SNP benches and it wouldn't find a spine to run up. That's what's wrong. And that is why the people of Scotland are losing faith in the SNP. It's why there's such a huge difference now between support for the SNP and support for independence. And what we have got to do is to galvanise support for independence and make sure that every constituency and every list has true fighters for independence standing there waiting to be elected, contending to be elected, not to warm their bloody backside on a red leather seat, not to make a load of money sitting in Holyrood, but to deliver the independence that our country needs so we can start to rebuild and become the country that we should be, where we can talk about low energy prices, where we can look at feeding everybody, where we can house everybody, where we can deal appropriately with rehabilitation facilities for everybody that needs them when they need them, that we can build the hospitals, that we can do everything that a civilised, democratic, resourceful country does. Not anymore of this begging bowl, cuddly mentality, sooking in with people who, in essence, consider themselves to be our imperial masters, because the behaviour of the SNP group at Westminster simply reinforces that impression day in and day out. And that video does it best of all. But worse, fully worse, was the post that Stephen Gethins had the neck to put on Facebook. So it looks like the SNP majority in next year's Scottish Parliament elections will mean an independence referendum. No, son, that's not what he said. What he said is, we'll look at it. What that means is, get yourself a buggery. It does not mean what you said it means, and it never, ever will. The people of Scotland are waking up to that, and they're waking up to you.
Well said. That's why, Charlie, you are in an audience of one. Our Eva always hits it on the nail. Clock's beating us as usual. I want to get through another quick couple of things. So just to you, this one. Now, I never thought I would say this day, but I agree with Brian Wilson, who I think is one of the biggest traitors to our country going. But an article, and Stu Campbell followed up on it with a fantastic article as well, Phil. But, you know, the incredible staggering incompetence of the underpricing by the SNP Green government at the time sold 30 gigawatts of offshore wind farm rights for 775 million at 25 million per gigawatt. England, who gets hardly any of the resources that we have for this type of thing, they're getting 8 billion, where they're getting 40 times the money that we negotiated. These clowns need removed.
Yes, they do, and they've been traitors to the cause since Nicola took over, and the traitors to the Scottish people. And these sellouts, they're bought and sold. This is the problem here. What we're facing is individuals who put themselves first are blackmailed or bribed or both, or they're undercover. They've never genuinely believed in independence. They want devolution. They just want the big I am. Nicola's the worst of them. She's all about herself. Nobody else. Doesn't give a damn about the people of Scotland. She's a selfish naff, and she's sold out. And there's, as I said, three things I'm aware of. I was aware of that I believed she was being blackmailed about, and if I know that, what do MI5 know about her? You know, so for me, this type of thing is yet more evidence, not that we need any, that the current leadership of the SNP, Nicola's cabal, etc., have sold the people of Scotland down the river, and it's appalling. The suffering continues, the pain continues, and it will not change until we get out of this union. And that for me is what it's all about. It's every time I see their faces, every time I hear their lies, every time I see the awkward silences when they cannot answer the question of why a Section 30, why they think a Section 30 is going to win. That pathetic effort by Stephen Gethins. I'm so disappointed and so angry, as we all are, at this. It's a traitorous act. It's a traitorous act, and it continues. And until we get rid of them, it's going to continue. And I mean the leadership of the SNP. That ship needs to redirect itself, turn, and move to independence, or it needs to be sunk. That's the bottom line. And everybody who doesn't support the unification, you're an enemy of the people of Scotland. So get your ideas together, bury your ego, and do what's right for the people of Scotland. Independence, nothing less.
Correct. And the people that negotiated that kind of throwaway giveaway of our wind power, do you really want them negotiating our independence? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I want to mention something here just for myself. You know, there is a movement throughout the world where the people are getting sick of the bigger parties. And we're going to come on to something in a minute. But firstly, over this weekend, it will be announced there's going to be a new president in Ireland. And with the great President Higgins, who was a great man, he's going to be replaced, it looks like, by an equally brilliant president and a woman. She's an independent. And she thinks that, and I agree with her, that the British and the Americans are warmongers and enemies of Ireland. I like this woman already, and I hope she gets it looks like she's going to have an absolute landslide victory. Well done. The Irish, as usual, shown us the way. You can support the independent people. Move away from the big parties, folks. They don't have your interests at heart. And that's very true. And on that very question, history was made down in Wales this week, Alan, and that was in Caerphilly, where Plaid Cymru took a seat from Labour, which they'd held for 115 years. 115 years, Alan. And most of the vote, the Labour vote split up, but a lot of it, most of it went to Plaid Cymru. Reform came up a bit, but Labour and Tories are in absolute free fall in Wales and in parts of England too. The difference is that in Wales, Plaid Cymru are taking up the slack. Who's going to take up the slack in Scotland? Because the same phenomenon is coming.
Well, times have changed. I mean, the mainstream parties are now being seen for what they are. Crooks. They're not politicians, they're crooks. They're in it for themselves, and all they want to do is help themselves to everything they can get and their friends. The people of Wales spoke and made it quite clear they are no longer accepting this. And what this also means is we have the opportunity now, because we have Wales, Ireland, Scotland, the Celtic nations, all uniting with one common enemy, and that is Westminster. So it may be worthwhile setting up a Celtic convention to organise and mobilise. So as we are all fighting at the same time, so England are having to fight 3 different battles while we are all fighting the one battle. But in Scotland, there is an alternative, because our SNP, as has been shown for 11 years, are no longer the party of independence, they are the party of devolution. But the alternative to that is Liberate Scotland, who have one policy and one policy only, and that is independence of Scotland. And in independent Scotland, there will be an election to elect a government. So those people who support Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, or any other party that is about at that time will have the option to vote for the policies and how they wish Scotland to be run. But at this present time, Liberate Scotland have the one policy, because we do not want those within the Labour Party who support independence not being able to vote for us because they don't agree with some silly policy that may not become a law in an independent Scotland. We want a clear page to tell people that all you're voting for with us is independence. Once we have it, you vote for what your policies are in an independent Scotland under the party you wish to represent you. But you cannot have that opportunity without first having independence. And you will never get independence by voting for anyone else but Liberate Scotland.
Here. It goes back, actually, the exact polar opposite of when Nicola Sturgeon said a vote for the SNP is not a vote for independence. Well, a vote for Liberate Scotland is a vote for independence and nothing else, nothing less. That's the reality, folks. Get behind it. And for that, we need people to get on board, to get help. And we need campaigners. We need donors. We need workers. We need candidates. You've got to get involved. It's run along the bottom, who and when and where and how you can get in touch. Because, the Irish showed us in 1918, Eva, when they replaced the Irish Parliamentary Party in one vote, in one election in 1918, shortly after the Irish declared their independence. But they got rid of the party who had become settled down in Westminster, the same ones as we've got the same problem. But here's Mary Lou McDonald in the Dáil this week, setting out where Ireland's going.
Tomorrow belongs to those who can hear it coming. This message should resonate powerfully as together we look to the future of our country and to our national journey from peace to unity. There is an onus on the government to prepare for constitutional change and to plan for unity referendums. July's landmark research report by Professor John Doyle of Dublin City University, supported by Ulster University's Economic Policy Centre, deals a fatal blow to the economic arguments proffered against a united Ireland, demonstrating that the costs associated with unity have tended to be exaggerated, whilst the benefits of an all-Ireland economy largely ignored. So the question is
they do the same everywhere, the establishment, Eva, and that's exactly what's happening in Ireland. They'll tell you it's going to cost you too much and you don't make enough, the usual lies. But that in Caerphilly, the Irish are preparing. It seems the Welsh are on the move. It's time we got on the move too, Eva.
Absolutely. That speech was ever so familiar. It's been the same down through all the days. Any country, any nation that ever considered or contemplated independence from the British Empire was told the same: you're too wee, you're too poor, you're too stupid. I mean, an obvious example, a small one, but an important one, is the island of Malta. They were told the same, and now they're doing fine, thanks very much. I think is it 65 countries that have gained their independence out of the British Empire? How many of them have been clamouring to get back in again? They're not exactly breaking the doors down, are they? So it was good to hear that from Mary Lou, but it was absolutely brilliant, spine-tingling to watch the result coming in from Caerphilly. I watched it live at the back of 2 this morning. I really liked the Plaid Cymru MS. Well, what is he? An MA? I can't remember what you call him. AM. I really liked his speech because he started off by paying tribute to his predecessor, who was a man who had died tragically very young, and then he went on to commit and dedicate himself to work for the benefit of everybody in his constituency. But he seemed to me to be a man of great principle. But it was a fantastic result for Wales, a fantastic result for Plaid Cymru, and for the Yes movement in Wales, because it, like Scotland, is bigger than Plaid Cymru alone. There are other independence supporting parties, including Propel, and other independence supporting organisations. So I hope, as Alan has suggested, that there can be a Celtic convention, because we know, given the state that Starmer's government's in, and we know the threats that he's facing from reform in other places, Starmer's the worst Prime Minister in at least living memory. Westminster is at its weakest for innumerable reasons, and this is exactly the time when the Celtic fringes should unite and strike and create the circumstances for our independence, because after all, we know that independence is what the majority of the people of Scotland want, and we would be failing in our duty towards each other within the movement if we did not take the opportunities that the present day actually offers and join up with those of our friends who think the same as we do, who want to see democratic events recognised internationally, so that the Celtic fringes can in fact prosper as independent, and in the case of Ireland, united countries, and no longer be thrilled to, colonised by, or bled dry by Westminster, which is, after all, England's parliament.
Hear, hear. And I'm afraid, the clock is absolutely hammering us, folks. As usual, we're running behind time now. Techie, if you're there, my media stuff has gone again. And we're going to finish in a special way, ladies and gentlemen. As we doff our hat to our cousins in Wales, I'd like to play you a wee video. And if it doesn't stir your heart, you might not know the words or understand the language, but the sentiment's there. And it's saying, "We are still here," is the song of Wales. And they say, no matter what's been done to them, everything that's happened to them, they're still here and on the rise. I've got a lump in my throat thinking about it. Techie, could you play that video clip for me?
Does neb yn ei nabod o, mae'n 1,600 o flynyddoedd, a'n amser hir i'r co. Ond aeth Magnus Maximus o Gymru, yn y flwyddyn 303, a'n gadael yn genedl gyfan, a heddiw
Yeah, I don't know, I get you. I can feel it much. We need to get better songs. We really do. Well done, Wales. Well done, Plaid Cymru. Scotland, it's our turn, it's our time. You've got to get in. And here's just a wee reminder, the fundraiser, the first fundraiser for Liberate Scotland, and we'll get some big news for you next week, I hope, folks. But you get in touch, you've seen the addresses, get to the website, get involved, get yourself along to the fundraiser, come during the day and listen to some fantastic guest speakers. More on that later. But until we see you again, you and yours, please, please take care and get active.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.